Okay, the topic of today is why is AIDS considered undetectable and why I say it is detectable and the percentages of why PEP treatment can be implemented much more reasonably and why my AIDS exposure test has such a high false positive rate. First things first, AIDS can be detected by the presence of another disease called HSV, also referred to as genital herpes, which causes groin sores. Okay, now that's not saying too much. You look at the United States, 20% of the population has HSV2. Okay, and only like 0.6% of the population has HIV. You know, 80 to 90% of your HIV patients have HSV, which causes genital herpes, which is kind of confusing. But basically, to say is you're in a high risk group if you have HSV2. Now, you look at my AIDS exposure test, it says to look for HSV2, which is groin sores, in a genital area or in a midsection. These genital herpes or groin sores consist only about one in like 20 actually have both. Is 0.54% have both out of the 10 to 20% that have HSV groin sores. So there's a very high false positive rate in the United States among people who have genital herpes versus also having HIV. The CDC came out with inconclusive because of that. But most people who have HIV do have groin sores. So it's a good test in that respect. But in respect of how many people that have the groin sores that are living with HIV, if you utilize PEP treatment, you're going to have to realize straight up in front, 1 in 20 times you get exposed, you will have kept yourself from catching HIV. And when you get into the gay population, the numbers are even worse, which actually means a more functional test. In the people with that are gay, it's like 1 in 2 have groin sores. And of that 1 in 2, which is about 2% of the population of the United States, 0.6%, well, 0.6%, I think is the number, have HIV. So that number is much closer, and the false positive rate is much lower, as you can tell. You're talking about a false positive rate in the 4 to 5, 1 in over 4 to 5 would be positive. Meaning that the other 4 out of the 5 would be negative, but you will have been treated for it as if it was positive because they couldn't determine at that point whether it was either positive or negative, since there's no actual test to test for the virus at that point. Now, if you wait more than 48 hours, PEP treatment is basically useless, which means you have to accept the fact that you're going to have a high false positive rate and be willing to take medicines that have to be started within 48 hours that last 4 weeks as a precaution against catching AIDS virus. Well, that's in the United States. Now let's look in some countries in Africa, like Swaziland. The numbers are different. They have like a 1 in 2 rate, false positive rate. That's a flip of the coin. You're right or wrong. If you want to take that high a chance as to whether you're going to catch AIDS versus going ahead and taking the treatments, that's up to you. But in the United States, it's a fairly high false positive rate, which means you would have successfully treated the virus and the rest of the time you just simply wasted your effort. But you wouldn't have contracted the virus either. So look at it the way you want. You want to waste the effort and make sure you don't get the virus, or do you want to take your chances just because so many of the positive results are actually only HSV and don't include HIV? Like I said, it's got to be taken within 48 hours. You got to make your decision quick. If you find you've had sex with somebody who's got groin sores, hemorrhoids, or you've shared needles with them, then if you don't know their orientation and you don't know whether or not they're high risk themselves, say it was you're a woman and you had sex with a man overnight, and let's say you're a woman that saw the groin sores, and he skipped off before you could stop him from skipping off, and you had to make a decision. Do you want to take the PrEP treatments or not? PEP treatments or not? That decision has to be made in 48 hours. Well, Thomas was out here. Have a good one.